Okay, so I know I'm not looking top tier or the best right now. Anybody who knows me knows that I care more about the message than the appearance sometimes, you know. But um, I just wanted to hop on here and say a couple things. First thing I want to say is that I am appreciative of um, professionals, medical professionals who actually take their jobs seriously, who fight for everybody, knowing that their fight may be exhaustive and the person on the receiving end of their professional help may not get any better. But they don't worry about the work that the person is doing more than they worry about the work that they're doing. Um, because at some point they're going to strike gold. And in that moment, when they strike gold, the person who they're helping, who understands that a lot of work is required to heal, will strike gold with them. And it's a good moment between the professional and the help seeker when it's a fit, and it's a fit that goes from um, taking action to maintenance for your wellness for the rest of your life. I also want to say that I have learned a lot about trauma. I have learned a lot about processing trauma. And I have learned a lot about how the body and the mind are so connected. It seems like a point that you shouldn't miss because obviously, you know, the brain is in the skeleton and the skeleton holds all the organs in the body and all that good stuff, right? But it's not every day that you just wake up and be like, oh, my brain is connected to my body, right? You just live, you know, because that's what you're supposed to do. But unfortunately, um, a lot of people, especially Black people who grew up in environments and communities like I did, um, the type of living that we do is adjusted to an alternative way of living that does not suit or serve a lot of us. I was talking to my grandmother. Well, I talk to my granny every day, but this particular conversation came up maybe last week or week before last, and we were talking about just an array of things. And I told her, I was like, you know, at this point, we as Black people have to stop bypassing and overlooking the fact that this most Black people do things completely out of order, outside of God's order. Um, and that's how we shoot ourselves in the foot. Um, Fornication, having babies out of wedlocks, abortions. And I know some people ain't gonna want to hear it, but I mean, if what I'm saying is not true, then hey, it may not be true in your scope, but just because you have a different scope, that don't mean that your scope can alleviate what is true. Look at your life. Look at your life. Same sex relationships, same sex, having sex with the same sex, making that okay. Incest and ancestral sexual relations that result in babies and results in births, and those children are already set at a disadvantage. Keeping that secret, people not knowing that their uncle is really their daddy and their daddy is really their uncle, and all kinds of crazy stuff. What I like to call a bunch of Black hillbilly bullshit. Okay? But I will say this in conjunction with what I just said. Yes, I know that Black people are not the only people who do the things that I just mentioned. However, I'm Black. So I got a first-hand experience and an up-close experience of what it looks like for Black people to do those things. And it's just not really in our benefit because we can fake it till we make it as much as we want to, but we still have this very obvious piece of us, our skin color, that doesn't give our fake it till we make it the same advantage as other races and things, right? And I do honestly feel like those things are changing, but it has not been erased. that mindset, that idea, that societal standard of race and color and all that stuff, that has not been erased. So we're living in an era of things becoming, or things changing, but we are not living in an era of erasure. Okay. And I know that can have a positive or a negative connotation behind it, you know, but that's not what this video is about, so I digress. Okay. A lot of the things that we experience in my community specifically, it does set up a lot of people to experience trauma from a very early age, and then continue to experience traumatic experience on top of traumatic experience on top of traumatic experience with no real help, no real education, no real insight on what's actually happening as a result of that situation, and how to process it to be able to move on and understand that that experience happened, but it is not your life. I think so often, you know, it's not uncommon for me to meet Black women, more specifically, who want to let me just tell my story. Sis, don't nobody want to hear that. Like, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, don't nobody want to hear that. But what I will say is that I have learned that to make trauma your story, to make trauma your baseline, is so unhealthy. And unfortunately, because of what's pumped to us through marketing and things of that nature, we think that carrying along this trauma is beneficial for us and the people around us, in this kind of distorted way that makes us feel like, oh, if I can inspire somebody through this, then I want to. I'm gonna be honest with y'all, nobody's inspired by still hearing you tell a story of trauma that you still give a lot of attention to, because it just means, you know, now that I understand it more, it just means that you just haven't really you have not really dealt with that trauma. And in due time, you will become an example of what it looks like to have success with trauma. It doesn't usually end well. Or on the other end of it, you'll display or show that maybe your success and how you gain success was a way for you to avoid your trauma. And both of those situations only leave room for that trauma to keep reappearing. And what you thought would be inspiring really just becomes an opportunity for people to exploit your pain and use your pain to try to make themselves feel better, or try to make themselves feel more righteous and superior. And I don't want that for anybody. But I've learned a lot, and it has taken a really long time, okay? I started my mental health journey back in 2019, and it is 2023, and I just now feel like I am at a place where I have processed things so deeply and gotten an understanding from mental health professionals who really, really enjoy their job and really go hard for their clients. Because trust me, I have had some mental health professionals who just were trash. I'm just gonna say it. And so I'm glad that in the midst of all of that, and in the midst of my learning, I never gave up, and I was eventually able to get super, super serious. And like I said earlier, hit gold and decide, okay, however much it costs, however long it takes, whatever they say, whatever they recommend, we're doing it, because I don't want to continue to live my life not knowing why I'm stuck in this cycle, having some type of idea of why I'm stuck in this cycle, but not really knowing what the cycle is, and then not knowing how to get out of the cycle. And then also not having the understanding that continuing to work to get out of that cycle is still a process after the therapy and after the work and after all of that. And understanding that it is possible that things may surface and things may continue to happen that may cause me to have traumatic responses in my body, and that will essentially affect my mind. But now having the tools to be able to recognize, hey, that was traumatic, it has affected me in this way, and now I have to go get help, so that way I can learn about what has happened and learn how to continue to keep up the proper maintenance for my mental health going forward. Another thing that I want to say is that, Hold on, it'll come back to me because I've been doing a lot of talking. So my mind is like trying to like recalibrate and come back to the talking points because I didn't write anything down. That's probably what I should have did, but I hardly ever write anything down when I'm talking because I know at some point it's going to resurface. But I have learned that for a very long time, and I think that this is the most significant point of it all, and sometimes it makes me emotional to talk about it, so I might cry. I'm not gonna cry, but I've learned that for a very long time in my life, I just turned 32 on Thursday, this past Thursday. I've learned that for a very long time, I did not have the ability to stop myself from a cognitive distortion known as emotional thinking and or emotional reasoning. And so a lot of times, because of how much trauma was still existing in my body over time, I had no control of how emotional reasoning would take over. And for very long periods of time, I could only think from an emotional rationale. And I know that kind of sounds like an oxymoron, right? But so I'll say this: I could only reason things through my emotions. Literally, the part of my brain, which now I know is my prefrontal cortex, would go completely offline for months and months and months. And I was literally living life based on how I felt at all times. And the other part about that I've learned was really dangerous is that I was surrounding myself around people who did not make it safe for me to have those moments of emotional reasoning. And so where I could have possibly shut that down or come out of that way of thinking earlier, I was around people who were prolonging that state of emotional reasoning because they were toxic to my mental health and my mental state at that time, causing me to go further and further into a darker hole caused by emotional reasoning. And when you learn those type of things, it's really heartbreaking because there's a part of me that has to forgive them because I didn't know what was going on and I put myself in front of them and, you know, they did what they did and whatever, right? I had always, before I even knew the science behind it, I had always known that I would find myself in situations where people would really try to play me. And so being in an emotional state of reasoning, getting me to a point where I'm able to realize or rationalize, oh, you trying to play me, would then spark an anger and a rage that was just pure anger and rage. For a very long time, that's what a lot of people knew me by. That's what a lot of people labeled me as, this angry black woman and all of this stuff. And it was a valid label, right? But I always struggled with this conflict of why do you expect for me not to be angry and respond to you in the way that you deserve to be responded to when you have clearly saw me in a vulnerable place, and because I was not mentally well to see it, you tried to take advantage of it. Going through therapy and talking to my therapist, I would always say things like, because they would always be like, you have so much insight, you have so much resilience. I'm like, baby, that ain't nobody but God, you know? Even in all of that emotional reason, if what y'all are saying from a scientific standpoint is saying that while I was going through that emotional reasoning, my prefrontal cortex was offline for so long that I couldn't really make reasonable, rational pathways of thinking. And then all of a sudden, the realization that somebody is in my face playing me came to the forefront, and I was able to address it and not even be able to really reason. That wasn't nobody but God. But yeah, they had to feel that anger that would come up, because there's just certain things that you don't do to people. You don't handle people in a certain way. And so I have to forgive them because, like I said, I didn't know what was going on. So I had no real way to rationalize and remove myself out of unsafe situations before they became destructive and damaging. Also, they may not know what's going on in their mind. because we all came from the same community, for the most part. Also, a lot of people don't think that there's anything wrong with them. So it was a lot of stuff just kind of combined together that would make these situations exacerbate to the level of explosion and discontent and discord and everything that happened. But one thing that therapy helped me understand is that what I chose to do after being damaged and hurt by people who I gave a lot of trust to, and I had to learn through therapy as well that I gave a lot of trust to people who I should have never even gotten that deep with, because I had, CPTSD and things of that nature. Because of that, I should have never given them that trust, and I didn't know any better. And so it made my life inevitably have to take on a worth of lower value and lower quality. But therapy has taught me, well, the therapy that I went through, like I said, it was pretty intensive therapy. And it was really intensive therapy. I was gonna say something, but I'm at a point now where I'm just like, there's just certain things I don't really want to share, because that was also something that I had to process as well, like how my CPTSD would cause me to overshare things, like I said earlier, thinking that I was helping people, but it was really just putting me on a chopping block to be attacked, and probably being attacked by people who go through and have the same and similar situations that I had, but just not at the point where they were ready to accept it. I had to learn about acceptance and all of that, and like being around people and being in spaces where I can obviously see that something about the way that they think and the way that they operate is not healthy, but also having to give them grace and understand that they may not be at a level in their wellness journey where they actually want to take action. I can't remember, it's like 5 steps. I got the paper in there. But, nonetheless, I digress. I had to get the tools to learn how to turn on my prefrontal cortex, and learn how to recognize, okay, I'm thinking, or I'm in an emotional reasoning state, and so I need to turn off the part of my brain that wants to think about this emotionally and turn on the part of my brain that needs to think about this rationally, right? And also understanding that there's nothing wrong with emotional reasoning. That is not a negative thing. We all do it. It's a way that our brain protects ourselves, right? But learning that when it becomes a chronic pattern of thinking, meaning you're doing it all the time for everything and every situation, then you create problems that then turn into not only mental health problems, but physical health problems. And we want to live a quality life. I know I do. And so that's the reason why I took the necessary steps to get the necessary tools, and to get the necessary therapy, and to get the necessary therapist and psychiatrists, I'm sorry, and actually sit with them for hours. I'm talking about hours a day, to process everything, and then after the processing, assess how do you feel, and then based on where I feel and where I'm at, then getting the type of tools that will help me continue to thrive in life. And I am just ecstatic to say good things about therapy, and good things about the journey, and good things about the education that I was given. And if anybody wants to know what process or anything I went through, reach out to me privately. I don't know if there's a way to, what do you call it? I don't know if there's a way to message on YouTube, but I'll put my email address in the description box, and you can email me, and I'll be more than happy to send over some referrals and things in order to keep my business private, and to also keep other people's business private. And then also on top of that, giving referrals to people so that way they can get the type of treatment that they need without any biases for me. I think that's so important. But I'm getting to a point where it's getting easier to recognize things, and it's getting easier to make those necessary changes. And one of the biggest things, if I can just say with excitement and happiness, that I've learned is that the therapy you need, the medicine you need, to change the way you're thinking so that way you can continue to live well, it doesn't even take that long. It doesn't even take that long. And I used to be under the idea that, you needed to meditate for an hour and walk for, a day, or, all kinds of just prolonged things that, if not done in the correct sequence, will be ineffective in the long run. So learning how to couple very well-known practices such as breathing exercises and mindfulness techniques, and how to increase dopamine and endorphins and oxytocin and serotonin and things of that nature through certain foods that you eat and activities that you do, but doing it in a way and in a sequence, in a particular technique, so that way you can do it less and it'll be more effective. So I just wanted to drop in and just say that, because I know for a very long time I've been on a mental health journey, and I don't plan on getting back on social media at all. I don't want to advocate for anything anymore. I am living my life in a way that I feel like is good for me, is healthy for me, and it doesn't include a lot of the things that I used to do. And I know some people have asked me, people that I hang out with and stuff, they've asked me to get back on social media, and it's just not happening, so, circumstances may change. And also I do want to say this, I know I talked a lot about emotional reasoning, but there are other cognitive distortions that I was able to recognize that I have. One of the other ones was polarized thinking, which is basically a lot of black and white reasoning, but of course is another part of the brain that is not allowing me to reason, not allowing my prefrontal cortex to be on and really be able to reason a situation, to figure out, okay, even if these are the rules and the situation may be this black and white, if a gray area does present itself, how do I work through, that gray area and things of that nature? It's a lot. I learned a lot. Now I will say this, because, sometimes, some therapy and some advice really don't have anything to do with you, because what I have to understand is that I'm only giving these people a piece. They're coming in at a point in my life, and I'm giving them a piece of some stuff, and they're doing their best to professionally assess not my life, but my way of thinking about the situation. And sometimes, and respectfully, I was in a space where I could, say, well, no, that's not necessarily what it is, and be able to give a little bit more context when necessary. But it's just because you have a therapist that, is certified and have degrees and things, I will say 90% of the time, their therapy and the way that they guide your thinking is very relevant. But there are going to be some times where, they say something based off of something that they really don't understand from possibly a cultural perspective or something. You have to just kind of get in there and be like, well, let me give you a little bit more context about this, because you're thinking over here and that's not what it is. It's therapy is very textbook. It's very textbook, and that's really what you pay for. But we still have to also, I feel like you still have to also remember that you live in a real world that some textbooks cannot capture, because it really depends on factors of like who wrote it and how much experience do they have with this and that and the other and things of that nature. So nobody's perfect, but I didn't go in with the expectation of anybody being perfect. Not myself, not the therapist, not the services, not the psychiatrist, not none of that. I went in with the expectation of, we're going to start some true work and get through some of these deeper issues, because I want to be healthy. I want to be well. And I would highly encourage anybody, if you watch this video, to do what you got to do and take that true step, take that true leap, to get into spaces that really, really, really dig deep enough to dig you out of the hole that you're in. So yeah.